Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of Film Spear. My name is Garreth, and today we have Macy, Alex, Jacob, Leya, and then we have our special guest, Lydia, who is a prominent screenwriter based in Los Angeles. Why don't you tell us about yourself, Lydia?
Hey, okay, so every time I meet with executives, I always give like a little spiel about who I am. So I can just share that with you guys because it'll give you the gist of like who I am. So I'm first generation Ethiopian American, and I'm actually from Northern Virginia, DC area. I grew up in a like stereotypical like immigrant household. I had a family of four. I had a mother, a father, and a brother. And life was like pretty great for a few years. And this all pertains to like my writing and why I chose to become a screenwriter. But when I was 14, I lost a sibling, and it sort of blew up this like perfect family household like dynamic. And my father really couldn't handle the grief, so he moved back to Ethiopia. And so my perfect family of four went to two. And thus began my years and descent into chaos. I like partied for about a decade. I like couldn't really understand why all these things were happening, right? And my role in it. And you know, I went to undergrad, I went to graduate school, and then finally in graduate school, I discovered screenwriting. And it was from a coworker that was like writing shorts. And I, at the time, was writing like poetry and dating articles and stuff, but I never like really tried screenwriting. But I've always loved writing. And so what ended up happening was I had an idea for a feature, and he gave me his screenwriting book. And somewhere in all of that, I discovered like other people's actions in my life don't determine my self-worth. And I sort of closed the door onto that chaos, and I decided to pursue screenwriting full time and move to LA. So I tell executives all of this because what I write about, what I focus on is trauma and identity. I write about people, and primarily women, who have gone through hell and who they're going to be on the other side of that, and how it determines like their identity or their self-worth. It's in all of my writing. My writing can switch from sci-fi to fantasy to family drama, but it's the core element that runs through it. So most of the time, these executives will see like they'll read something really dark, and then they'll see me, and I'm like, "Hi, what's up?" Like, da, da, da. And I'm like, "Well, let me tell you why I write this kind of stuff." And so that's a little bit about me. I know that's a lot in a little bit of amount of time, but it really pertains to what I write and how I got into the industry.
It's like,
That's all. Yeah.
it is a lot, but that's a really good history. I mean, so you had a basis in writing before going into screenwriting?
So I did not so I was always writing as a kid. Like when I was in fifth grade, I was entering poetry contests. And when I got to grad school, I was writing for an online publication, but I never had any formal training for screenwriting. I was pursuing business in graduate school, which is like, I don't even know how the stock exchange works. Like it was not the right field for me, but I just like needed to be in school. And so like I was doing that. And then while doing that, I discovered my true passion. And when I discovered my true passion and I moved to LA, I made sure to apply to screenwriting classes. They were not university classes. They were like a lot of the comedy schools out here offer classes. And I did that, and I signed up for 3 of them, and I did each of them like 3 times, to the point where they're like, "Lydia, you can't keep taking this course." And I was like, "You're not going to tell me who I'm going to be." Like, this is, and that's how I sort of learned how to screenwrite, like from these formal, informal classes.
Would you like advise those kinds of classes to other people going into screenwriting, or would you advise like a more like formal route?
I would advise those classes, and every assistant or any younger writer that I meet, I suggest those because, okay, like I think I'm very jealous of the people that went to film school. Yeah, like sounds great. Like wish I could have done that. That was not my path, right? My path was like, you're going to go live your life. and it's going to be chaotic and crazy, and then you're going to come to what you're supposed to do. And when I came to that, I had a lot of stories, like personal stories, like, hey, you know what I did that was crazy on a Thursday night, like, you know, we're putting it into a script. So like I had to like get life training. But these programs, like why I like these classes that I took in LA is they're like 7-8 week classes, and within it you go from idea to script, right? And also like I came out here with only a little bit of money in my pocket, right? Like I can't pay 50 grand for a university, but I can pay 340 for a 7-week class, right? And also for me, I didn't know anyone in LA really, so it was a chance to meet other like-minded writers who wanted to get involved. So I don't think formal training is necessary. I think ambition and determination and self-structure is necessary. And you know, if you have an institution teaching you that, that's great. But if you don't, you can do it on your own as well.
I actually, this is a story that I might know a little bit about. How did your, what was that story that you had when your screenwriting career began?
Oh, like with the kid in the park?
Yeah, I just feel like it's a kind of a good networking type story, you know, for
yes. So I didn't have like, so I came to LA with, I'll just be really honest, I came to LA with 10 grand in my pocket. I packed up my Hyundai Elantra, and which I'm still driving today, and no shade. And I didn't have housing. I was staying with a cousin, but I knew I wanted to be a writer. So I applied to these 3 classes, right? And actually had my first class the first day I came to LA, or like the first 30 minutes into coming in LA. And I also made sure I had like printed a million business cards. Like these were the only elements that I could control, right? Like I didn't know anyone in the industry. I just had to make sure I was prepared, okay? And then I just like went with God. And so I get to LA and it's like 2 months in, and like nothing's like really panning out. Like I've had interviews, you know, for things that the teachers of those writing classes got me, right? Which that's a nice little plug, right? But nothing really panned out. So I'm at this park in LA, and it's like Valentine's Day, and I think I'm like crying over some dude that like didn't even really like me. It was just like, you know, it's like stereotypical like Valentine's Day blues. And I'm like, and this little kid runs past my blanket, right? And I'm like, I'm going to go play with that baby. And my friends were like, please don't chase a strange baby. And I'm like, it's going to be fine. Like, no one's going to think it's weird. Like, look at me, like, I'm fine. And they're like, this is why we're telling you not to. And so finally I go and I play with this little kid. And after the father realizes like, I'm not going to kidnap the kid, he like starts talking to me too. And like, I start telling, like just being open and honest. Like I moved to LA 2 months ago. I'm from Virginia. Like it's really hard. I have my master's in business and I miss home. And he was like, I'm from Germany. And like, I understand I moved here to pursue my career. And it turns out that he was the production designer for Harry Potter and V for Vendetta. And 2 weeks later, he gave me my first job as an assistant on set. So like, you know, I think Leah wants me to share that story, and I share that story because it's like, you truly don't know where you're going to meet people in LA. Like I always tell people, don't flick someone off when you're on the road. That could be your next boss. Okay. And like, you just don't know, like you should be kind in general, but you really don't know, like you just see people everywhere like that. And most of us are in the industry. I feel like here, like a lot of us are like 60-70% of people. So yeah, opportunities will arise, and it's like about you, like, I don't know, like being honest. Like I told him, you know, like, oh, I have a master's in business. Can I give you my business card? Like, can I da-da-da? And so that's how that sort of happened. Did you want me to go through some of these questions, or what should I do?
I feel like we're going more with like the flow of how you answer, but I was like,
like
kind of wondering, because like you described it about like the opportunities of like what you come across. Is that like how a career as a screenwriter kind of goes? Because I've like, from what we've learned like here in our education, they don't tell us much about how a screenwriter lives, because it is a very irregular career of
Yes.
connections and finding places. And I was like wondering how you kind of like maneuvered through that through your start.
Yes. Okay, so I think there's like I think it is, I'm not gonna lie, it really is hard to break in. Like I think that when you join the guild, they say like, or the Writers Guild, right? They say more people get drafted for baseball than get to be like drafted in as a screenwriter annually, right? So it's like it is tough, but it's not impossible, right? So like, especially like if you have made your mind up that this is what you want to do, like and you just got to believe that, and you just got to be persistent, right? So I don't think it's impossible. I think that there are different avenues. So I did a combination of two different avenues. Like I met that guy and I didn't immediately get a job as like a TV assistant. I had to work on set for like 2 years as an art PA, which was like, it was a great experience, but it's like a lot of work. And I had to, like, he got me my first 2 jobs, right? But I had to hustle, and like, he introduced me to the people he worked with, and then I had to hustle and make friends with them to get on the next job. And then I had to do that with every job, right? So like, someone might give you an opportunity to work with them, but then you have to hustle and keep going. So I did that for 2 years. I kept hustling for 2 years. And there were times where like, you know, that 10 grand went away fast. Like there was one time where I was at my brokest in LA, and I think I had like $200 in my account, and that was it. You know what I mean? And so like, I like had to borrow money from my Ethiopian cousin who came from Ethiopia like not long before. And that's like not how the dynamic is supposed to go. Do you know what I'm saying? So I had to be an assistant, and I had to hustle, and being an assistant on commercials and stuff is not as like, you go from job to job, commercial to commercial. It's not consistent, right? But you do that for some time until an opportunity, or you meet someone in the, like I met another assistant who was friends with a bunch of girls that were assistants on a TV show, right? So we all became friends, and we would have, and I took them out to like coffee. I tried to like, you know, become their friend and like learn about what it's like to be a TV assistant. So we all became friends. And in a couple of months, when one of them got promoted, she brought me in, right? And so once I crossed over to being a TV assistant, I was able to network with TV writers, and I was able to jump from show to show and get promoted, okay? And so that is one route, like the assistant route, which is a very like prominent, like a lot of people in LA take that route. And so I did that until I got my first writing opportunity on God Friended Me. And when I co-wrote my first episode, I was an assistant, okay? So that's one route. But while I was assisting at God Friended Me, I did another route as well, which is all of these major networks like Warner Brothers, CBS, Fox, all of these places, they have these like writing programs for diverse young writers. They're primarily for like POC people, but there are other ones that have for everyone. And it's to help get these people, like shine a light on people that maybe wouldn't have been overlooked, or because of nepotism, or because of racism, or whatever, right? So I applied for this program, and Warner Brothers program, I didn't make it. I made it to the final round, but CBS's program the next year, I made it. And I got into the program. And once you get into the program, they do so much for you. They got me my managers, they got me my agents, they train you for 6 months. And then they put me on my first show, which was Clarice. So those are 2 different routes. I hope that was helpful. That was a lot of information, but and then there's always nepotism. If you have a cousin or someone that can get you a job, that's a great way. I didn't but I know people that know like their uncle is like, but that was not my path.
I mean, it's interesting to hear multiple routes, because like I feel like in film school they don't talk about the routes of a screenwriter. They like just show you how to do it, and then they just like move on, expecting you not to go into it.
Yeah, they teach you about the craft, but the thing is like somebody like needs to teach about the hustle, right? Because yeah, it's great if you're great on the page, but if ain't nobody gonna read it, then how does that matter, right? Like, so it's like, it's both. You have to be good at both. And like, you have to like, I'm laughing because it's like probably not like a writerly thing, but you have to like be willing to like be uncomfortable and talk to people and like put yourself out there. And most of all, like I truly believe if something is meant for you, it comes easy, not hard. But keeping the thing and getting better at the thing, like, you know, like is going to be hard and challenging. But like me getting my first job, it was like, it just happened, right? But what was hard was I had to make sure that every job I did, I worked my ass off. I never complained. I never sat down, and I was a joy to be around. And even if I wasn't, you know, I cried in that Hyundai Elantra so many fucking times. And, you know, I made sure I was always like connecting with people, always getting people's numbers, always doing that. Like you have to go above and beyond because there's a million people that they can give that job to. Even an assistant job, there's a million people that would want that job. So why are they choosing you? You have to remember that, right? And you have to like you just have to have the hustler's mentality. Like you can't like get like for 2.5, I think I assisted for like 3 or 4 years, and I was like, I'm 34, so like and I was in like my like late 20s, early 30s, and I was like, I have a master's degree, and like people are telling me like, go get me a macchiato. Like I'm like confused, like, you know what I mean? Like how to, you know, you have to like not think about that. You have to think about where you want to be and like what it's about down the road or down the line or whatever. And you just have to hustle. You have to not be scared to ask people, hey, do you know anyone? Or everyone I talked to from the day I moved to LA, I told them I was a writer. I just always made sure to put that in, always to tell them I was writing, to always be taking classes, to always like, you know, like just keep checking every avenue, like nonstop. So like, that's the hustle that like, I feel like they don't really share.
When you're finished writing a script, do you become like hands off in terms of like control? Do you like lose some control after the fact?
Like on a show?
Yeah, like after the script is like completed.
Yeah. So like when you're staffed on a show, right? Like, yeah, you lose control. I mean, really when you're hired as, it's different when it's your own personal work and you're developing with somebody versus like if you're a hired writer for a show. When you're a hired writer for a show, like I look at it as like nothing is mine, right? Like I'm just here to like do the best version for them. So a lot of times like your boss will have you write stuff and then you pass it up to your boss and it completely changes, you know what I mean? And then there's times where like you're assigned an episode and you write your version of it, your boss changes it, writes their version of it. And then if they're like a great boss, they'll let you go on set and manage this episode. And you are then the like captain of this episode. Like you have to make sure that like when the directors are shooting and when it's being filmed, that what you guys wrote in the writer's room ends up coming across on the page. So that doesn't mean like interject and like tell the director what to do, you should never do that, or tell the actors what to do, you should never do that. But you do, what I'm trying to say is like, you do have some sort of control, like, you know, like a version of control of it after you write it, but it just might not be the version that you wrote. Most of the time it's not.
I know you mentioned like earlier about how you co-wrote, like your first thing was how you co-wrote an episode for a different show.
Mm-hmm.
Was it hard going into co-writing with someone else?
No, I mean, I like co-writing because that's another person to share the work with. I'm just like, but like, because most of my episodes I've written, I've co-written. I've only written one episode solo, like for a show. I think when you're starting out, like when I was an assistant, co-writing was annoying because I wanted to like show I could do it. And, you know, like you have so much, like you put so much pressure on yourself to like make sure you do a good job and like make sure your bosses know that you're a good writer and all this kind of stuff. So like if some dude is like fucking up, you're just like, God, like you're carrying the train, like you're messing up the train, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Get your shit together. But like, once you get a couple like episodes down and you've done it a little bit, you realize like all that pressure is not necessary, and that it's better to work with someone because you can like fill each other's gaps and help each other in different ways. And you're not so competitive to outshine the other person or outshine the room or whatever. So I think it's annoying in the beginning, but I think it's because of ourselves that we are making it annoying. Like, you know, like our ego, not really the other person. I mean, sometimes the other person's annoying, you know, let's be real, but it's like, but yeah.
When it comes to writing a script, what are the like certain, I guess, elements that go into making a script, I guess?
That's a good question. So I think every time you write a script, it's your process is different. That's what I'm like. I'll just talk about personal. Well, first off, let me ask you, do you mean the elements of going into a script when I'm working on a project at home for myself, or when I'm working on a project, when I'm working on a show?
I guess just in general, like when you go about writing the script, whether it's like for a home project or for like a professional project.
Okay. Well, the processes look very different for both. So like when I'm at home working on a project, like I essentially like to create stuff that like for instance, like I've been watching Never Have I Ever so much, like so much. It's like my favorite show. So like I was like, I want to see if I can create something like this. So then I start to create a version of a show like that. Like actually that's like I get an idea for the truth is, sorry, I'm like trying to figure out my own fucking process. I get an idea for something randomly when I'm in a car, or like my current idea, I got it from an Uber, right? I was just like riding to the airport in an Uber and I was like, oh, I have this great idea. I wonder how this show would, like, what more could I build on this idea, right? So, and then I like get little tidbits of ideas that build on that first idea, right? And then I'm like, okay, what would be the best vessel for this idea? And most of the time, the best vessel is what I'm watching a lot on Netflix. I'm like, this would be great in the tone or in a show like Never Have I Ever. And so then I sort of like start to say, okay, like if my idea works well in this sort of high school ridiculous tone, what are some other characters that can go in this high school world? Like I need a girl named Ashley with 2 E's. Like she sounds like a real asshole. Like she should be in this. Like, you know, like, so I start building like that, and I build and I build and I build. And then, and you just build on it, right? And then once you start having like characters, then you have to start figuring out what the characters want. What is their journey in the episode? And, you know, you should start with your main character. What does this character want? What is her journey from the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode? And like, you know, what am I trying to say in this sample of writing? You know, what am I trying to get across? What am I, you know? And so you slowly build by like build. And a lot of times what I still do today is what I used to do when I first started, which is, so like I told you I wanted this show to be like Never Have I Ever, right? So what I do is I watch Never Have I Ever, and every scene, I pause it and I write down, what is this scene about, right? And then I go to the next scene, pause it, what is this scene about? So by the end, I have a 2-page document on my phone that is exactly a reflection of this show. So then I have the structure of this show I want to create, like you know what I mean? Like that I'm trying to emulate. And so then I study how they structured their show, how like, this is the first act, this is the second act, this is the third act, blah, blah, blah. And then I like create mine similar to that, right? So like, because everything has been done before, you have to you use everything like as a floor plan or whatever, and then you make your edits, like what it should be for your show and and stuff like that. So that's a trick I was doing, like, you know, like when I first started, and I still do it. I did it for Buffy, I did it for Black Mirror, I do it for everything, Vampire Diaries, like anything that's like pretty good. I'm like, okay, let's see how they did it. I hope that was helpful.
It makes a lot of sense. I remember
thank you.
reading that you should probably know everything you write about. So you gotta research really hard.
Yeah. Like, you know, like you should write what you know, right? So like a lot of what I write about, like, is like, you know, I know people that do historical like stuff. Mad props to you, bro. Like I can't, I mean, if I'm getting hired to do it, then I'll be like the best historian ever, right? But like for me, like I tend to tap into like more emotional like stories, and like about abandonment or loss or grief. And because like when I write those character journeys, I know what that feels like, and I can speak to that. So I think it is better to write what you know, and you'd be so surprised, like the shit that you see in your everyday life, like that just inspires. Like the other day maybe I'll just go another question, because I was like, the other day I was driving and I was like, I was like online on TikTok, there was like the story of like how China had a red sky, right? And I was like, you know, I wonder if there was like an animated short or something that could show like how, like when you personally are in a depression or something, if it could change the color of the sky that you see, right? So that people could understand what it's like to have depression. Like if someone is really depressed, then every day their sky is gray. And if someone is like, you know, like bipolar, some days it's bright and some days it's, and you just like see things. And I think it just like, I don't know if that made any sense, but in my mind yesterday, it was fucking fire. I was like, this is so good.
No, that makes like perfect sense. It sounds like a really good idea, actually.
Thank you. And then like, okay, let me really quick tell you where the idea goes, because I feel like people always want to change other people's like moods and perspectives. But the thing is, like, you'll never change someone's perspective. But what you can do is do something nice or be kind to that person. And so like someone's gray sky would have like one little pink person. And then if everyone was just kind to each other, then everyone would be pink and yellow and green. And then that gray sky would be like lit up with color. And it's essentially just like be kind to each other sort of thing. Does that make sense? Leo's like, no. I'm workshopping it. It's gonna make sense.
So I want to ask you, what is your opinion on like dialogue in a script? Can too much dialogue ruin it in a sense?
No, I don't think so. I saw that question. I don't think so. I think actually, like sometimes when you're first writing, like I'm writing a first draft of a script right now, and I actually have less dialogue and more screen like action and scene description. And I think that more dialogue. Okay, like the truth is, when people are reading your script, like they don't want to go through like chunks of like description. It's too long to read. They rather just like breeze through the dialogue, right? So like I don't think it's bad to have a heavier more dialogue. I just think that it's not worth extending a scene for it. Like your scene should never run long because you want your characters to say more stuff. Like, you know what I mean? I think like just look at your scene and end it where it needs to be ended. Like you can kind of feel when it's too long. You know what I mean? When the shit is dragging, like it needs to end. Sort of thing. That help?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like interesting because like with us here, they emphasize on us not utilizing dialogue as like the main point of scenes, because like I don't know why, but teachers here hate Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Like to an insane extent because of his dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're teaching you the art form, you know what I mean? But like, I get it. I like, again, I'm like scrappy. I didn't do film school, so I'm sure that there's like, they like would read my scenes and be like, what the fuck? So like, I don't know. But I know when I'm reading someone's shit, I don't want to see a lot of screen description. Like, why am I reading an encyclopedia? Like, what the hell? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's a good balance. Like, I also think in your screen description, it should be like kind of fun to read, right? Like I try and make it like fun and not so like I'm talking to the person, right? Like, you know, like rather than like, I don't know, than so studious. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, I think dialogue is great. I think that dialogue should be like how people talk, right? So like that takes time to learn, but good dialogue is great.
Actually, that's actually a very interesting point. Like, I think it is a sort of unique skill, being able to make dialogue like more conversational than feeling like you're listening to words off a script.
Yeah, agreed. My first boss, like when I was an assistant on God Friend of Me, would be like, read your scenes aloud to yourself, Lydia. Like, and hear it. Like, does it sound like how people would talk? And then what really helped me more than him, he was great, but what really helped me was like, there's this, my friend is an actor, right? And I would have him on my first job on Clarice, like, I was like, can you help me write dialogue better, right? Not, he didn't write the scenes, but like, he would talk to me about them. And he would just be like, this is not how people talk. Like, and he sort of like fried me and grilled me. And because he's an actor and he's reading lines all the time, like he'll come across like scenes where he's like, this is just not how, like they want me to read this scene, but this is just not how people talk. And so he kind of drilled it into my head, like make the dialogue like how people talk. And I saw this thing online that Shonda Rhimes said, like where I think it's in her master class, where she was like, you should go to like a restaurant or a coffee shop and like listen to how people talk to each other. And it is really abrupt. Like, it's not like how we think. Like, they could be talking about one thing for like 2 seconds and then completely like, we're just on another topic, like, you know? And so I think that that's super interesting. And I think if you can write dialogue well, that's like, because a lot of people are kind of like boring with their dialogue. So if you can write it well, then I think that's a good skill to have.
Do you think there's any difficulty in like sort of matching that divide? Because you're right, people don't like in reality talk sort of the way it's reflected on screen.
Yeah.
And kind of like meeting that divide between having a healthy dose of like realistic elements of how people speak, but also having like the sort of narrative, because you know it's like a weird, you know, sort of like an uncanny valley effect, if that makes sense, where you have to find that divide between like enough of like building the story to have a narrative in your dialogue, but enough of like making it real that it doesn't feel like you're just trying to push a narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the trick, right? Like, I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you want to make it sound real, but you also have a story point you need to get across in the scene to make the bigger story work. So it's like, yeah, I think that's like the struggle, right? Like, how do I make this shit real, but how do they talk about like pilgrims? Like, it's like, you know, you gotta like make it both work. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how do we, you know, and then thus the job is created. You know what I mean? So you know, a trick I use is like I add just like a lot of like contractions, because like no one's fucking saying formal words. Like, I don't have time for that. Like, I need you to understand what I'm saying quickly. So like I add a lot of contractions. I like, you know, instead of saying what is someone doing, I say what are you doing? Like, that already gives it like a more realistic feeling.
Is there anything about being a screenwriter that you dislike?
Oh, that I dislike? You know, like I think Garreth, right? Yes, Garreth mentioned earlier how like the job is like inconsistent, right? I think that's the tricky part, right? Where it's really exciting because like, you know, like since I've been in LA, I've been on 5 different shows. So the great part about that is like, if I don't like someone, like I get to say goodbye to you after a certain amount of weeks. Like I get to say, it's a beautiful thing in my industry. I get to say goodbye so many times, and I make all these new friends, and then I go on my new show and blah, blah, blah. But the tricky part about that is like, so I just finished a mini room for a show in October, right? And now I'm on like, and it was like, it's the smallest job I've ever had. It was like 5 weeks because it was a mini room, and we're waiting for the show to get picked up. It may or may not get picked up, which means I may or may not have a job on January 1st. So I think not necessarily, it's exciting to not know what your next gig is, but it's also like, ooh, guess I can't go to Aritzia today. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I gotta, like, I have to like manage my money and make sure like I'm not, you know, and another thing is, it's like, because you can get a job at any time, at any moment, it makes traveling hard. Like I can't, besides the holidays, I can't really, it's hard for me to travel because I might get a job and then I have to be on the job. So, but I still, for me, it's the best job in the world. I love it. It's exciting. I get to meet new people and I get to do what I love. So even what I just said, I don't really dislike it. It's just more of like an inconvenience sometimes. But hey, like it far beats anything else. Like I'll take that any day.
Kind of plays into the adage, like you have to love it to do it, because if you don't, it feels a little taxing. But if you do love it, it's like, well, this is what I want to be doing. So
yeah, like some of my friends are like, they are like, I could never not know where my next paycheck is coming. And I'm like, girl, I'm just riding the wave. Like, this is great. Like, and they compensate you. Like, you get paid really well when you're working. So if you manage your money and stuff, then you're fine. And, you know, but it's also tricky where like, I have friends that like are really talented writers and they have to drive for UPS now. Right. And because they haven't had a job in 2 years. So it's just tough, you know, you have to love it. Like you said, you have to love it because like you can be on top of the world the next day and then you can be like filing for unemployment the next. So it's like, you know.
I think it's like something common with like how people say with actors, you don't do it for the money. You're not doing it to be famous. You're doing it because you want to be, because like most people aren't going to be famous or profitable out of this, like in the long run.
Yeah, I think you can be profitable. I think that if okay, like you need to throw that away if you want to be you chose the wrong side of the camera if you want to be famous. But no, I think that like I think there's different levels to fame. So like be like famous in the writing world, but like, you know, only other writers will, I don't know, people are starting to get to know like showrunners and stuff. Like it's like now it's becoming cool to be behind the camera, right? And like you're getting mad respect and a lot of kudos and stuff like that. So you are getting acclaim. It's just not like, you know, unless you're Tarantino or someone like that, you're not going to get like all of that stuff, which is great. Which is fine. You can be profitable though if you're smart with your money. And you know, like I have friends that write for television, and then on the off cycle when they're not working, they like write a feature and then sell a feature, and they can make a lot of money like that. So I think that you can, if you're good and you are getting opportunities, you can be profitable for sure. You can make a lot of money.
I just wanted to ask what you thought made the successful script.
In general?
Yeah.
Like I'll just like say personal scripts. What makes a successful script is like a really unique idea with a lot of heart, like with a strong hero who has a lot of heart and who you're rooting for. So like, you know, a lot of times you'll see like these like, and I even have a version, but like a basic murder mystery script and blah, 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 blah. You know, and those are good. They're important because they help you learn. But if you can write something that, you know, that you haven't really seen that much on television, or that's sort of bold or high concept or just like out of the box, and then you inject that with like a really formidable and like with a good hero who you root for, who has like a real issue they're trying to get over, like the loss of their father or like a bad breakup or something, and you're rooting for this person because you see a little bit of yourself in this person, or that person is relatable to you, then I think that's a really good script. Like, I'll just like give you an example. Like, okay, so I told you I'm obsessed with Never Have I Ever. But you know why I think that show is so successful is because the hero says all the things that we think or have felt about being a loser and not being cool. And she verbalizes this. And she so desperately wants what we all want, which is to be accepted and to be deemed worthy and cool. And so I think that that taps into a very human desire. And that makes her interesting because this girl is willing to go to any length to be cool. And I think that's funny because we've all been there. So I hope that answered that question. That's like very long-winded way.
No, I did. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I think that kind of like leads into like the next thing I want to ask is like, for people who are like starting out in screenwriting, like how would you strengthen it? Like strengthen your writing style, like not just inside of like a classroom or learning, but like, is there any like way that you would give to strengthen a writing style? I kind of feel like you might have answered this with like knowing the material and stuff earlier.
Yeah, like, no, I'm thinking because it's like, you know, there's like a lot of people are like, I'm thinking just because it's a good question. And I feel like I've come across this a lot in like regular life. And like, I feel like your writing style and your voice and all this kind of stuff, like, I think you're gonna continuously learn that, right? And it's gonna continuously grow and evolve and blah, blah, blah. And it's sort of like this amorphous thing. Like, it's like, what is my writing style? I don't know. Like, I just like, I don't know. Like, I can't, but what I can tell you is like, what shows I like. And like, I can also tell you like, what my stories tend to be about, right? Or like, what, like, I all my stories tend to deal with grief or abandonment or loss or broken love. Like, so these are the things I like to write about. And when I watch stuff on TV, I try and like watch it and then tell myself what I like about it. And so I can understand what I like, right? And what I'm gravitating to, or why a lot of times, like, I'll watch a show now and I'll be like, this show is successful because of this component, like what I just said about Never Have I Ever, right? And I just try and learn like that. And then I don't know, maybe like an exercise you could do is like write down like all the things you like, the major highs and lows of your life, like the good things and the bad things, and like maybe see if you can incorporate that in your writing, or I don't know. You just have to write, and then you keep writing and you keep writing, you keep writing, and then you start to see a trend in your writing of like the shit you keep talking about. You're like, I guess this is important because it keeps coming up. You know what I mean? So like that was a very confusing way to answer that, but
No, I think I got it. It's like about finding like your central theme as a writer, and like your central standing part where you can like establish a connection with, and like
exactly. Because if you like anything that you've personally experienced or feel close to, when you inject that into your writing, it's like, have you ever tried to write about something you have no idea about? Like, I wrote a cop drama once and I was like, this is horrible. Like, I have no desire to write about the police, numero uno. Numero two, like, I don't know anything about this world. I'm like making it up. It feels so one-dimensional, like it's not real, you know? And so if you write about stuff that you know or you've experienced, then it has another dimension. It has another layer to it. It feels more real, you know? And as you grow up and you go through life, you will naturally experience more things. So you're like, where you can pull from gets bigger, right? Like, you'll have more stuff to talk about. Like, you'll understand what being married is like. You'll understand what being hopefully not divorced, but you know what I mean? Like, you'll have like different things. And I think it's important to know, like, what have you been through, good and bad, not just bad, that you can speak to and that you can inject in your characters and their stories. Because that's, last thing I'll say, that's what people hire you for. People hire you for your life story, in a sense, because that's where a lot of your ideas springboard off of.
Okay, I think we're getting towards like the ends of our questions, but what advice would you give to like aspiring screenwriters? Like people just entering into the business?
Like I would say be tenacious. Like, if this is really what you want to do, like do some research. If you really want to be like a television writer, because there's different types of writers. If you want to be a feature writer, that's one role. I would suggest being a TV writer because it's the most similar to like an office job that you can get, you know what I mean? Because like we have a writer's room and we come to work pretty much like 10 to 6. And it's still not like having a regular job because we're on call, like we're on for like 26 weeks, or 20 weeks, as opposed to a regular job that you just have forever. So if you want to do that, right, I think that you need to move to LA. So if you want to be a writer, moving to LA, saving your money, writing all the time, because there might be a moment where you get an opportunity here, but like someone once told me, like your script is your business card, right? So like if you ever get an opportunity here and then somebody wants to read your script, you have to make sure you have like at least one good sample that can really speak to you as a writer, and that will just really, that is like your calling card, right? So I would say like you move to LA, save your money, move to LA, apply for programs out here or reach out to people that out here. Like I'll leave my email in the chat before I go, so anyone can reach out to me whenever for advice or anything. Reach out to people that I think there are some websites here that like are like assistant work. I would be very careful with that. Like don't get on Craigslist can be weird. You know what I mean? And I would look at some of those programs I mentioned, especially if you're POC, like they really, really do help. They're very hard to get into, but they're worth it, if you do get into them. So yeah, I mean, you kind of just like have to come out here and then like just try and go to, like I was going to meetups, I was trying, nothing came out of that. I met other writers, but it's really just being out here. It's really tough. Sorry. But in the meantime, if you're not out here, writing. Before I came out here, I was taking online writing classes. I was doing improv in Austin. I was doing lots of other things before I got out here.
Thank you. I think that's actually very helpful for like people going into it, because there's like often not enough encouragement with screenwriting in general, unless you're like already in LA. Yeah,
I mean, like, look, I was 27 when I moved out to LA. And what I did was I looked at my life. I was working a marketing job. I was miserable. And I was like, I have nothing holding me back. I need to try this. Worst case scenario, I just move back home. Like, so I really need to give this a real shot. And so once I decided that mentally, I like put together business cards. I signed up for 3 classes all over the city. I moved out here and I made sure like I had like a nest egg of money, like I told you, the 10 grand or whatever. And I just like tried to connect with anyone who was willing to connect. I made sure I was pleasant. I made sure I worked hard. I did a lot of things like, that made me feel like I shook hands with people. Like I was, like I wasn't as scared or shy as I would have normally been. Like I was like, I moved here, so I got to make something count. Like I got to do it, And I think if you have that mentality and that sort of like determination and that and like that no is not an option, then I think that you will be successful. But I do not think you can be timid. I do not think you can wait. I do not think that you can just hope everything works out. Like, I think you have to like put all your heart into it and do that for 6 months to a year. And then if something doesn't pan out, then you reevaluate. You know what I mean? But I don't think I think that you have to be a fucking beast. You do, because there's a million people that want the shot. So why you know? So.
Thank you. That's a really great. I don't really know how to react because I think you said everything needed to be said.
Okay, great.
Did anyone else have any questions?
No, I don't have any as of right now.
Okay. Before we wrap up, did you have anything you wanted to say, Lydia?
Yeah, do you have anything you want to say to me, Leah? Oh, I thought you
Oh, no, I meant
thought you were saying
Lydia.
that to
Sorry,
Leah.
I know I
You're saying
said
it to
Lydia.
me.
Sorry.
Oh, you're saying it to me. Look at me trying to talk shit to Leah. Sorry. Do I have anything I want to say? No, I think this class is really, really cool. Like, I think it's awesome. I put my email in the chat. You can reach out to me if you have questions, if you want to connect, want more advice, anything. If you move out to LA, hit me up. And yeah, like, just whatever path you guys are pursuing, just believe it's meant for you. And I think it'll happen. Like, and any way I can be of service or be helpful, just like let me know. And really quick, that's an L before my email. It looks like a 1. I feel like sometimes it looks like a 1, but it's Teffera@gmail.com. So, but yeah, that's all. And I love you, Leah.
I love you too.
We went
Okay.
to high school together.
Thank you for being a guest on this episode.
And piano lessons when we were younger. Yes, of course. It was very fun. I'm like, oh, now I probably have to go write because I was just talking about writing for an hour. So there's no fucking excuse now. I need to go do it. Yes, thank you for having me and hit me up. And I'm very excited for you guys.
Okay, well, I think this concludes our 5th episode of Film Sphere. Thank you, Lydia, for being with us today and enlightening us and like letting us see a peek into the screenwriting world.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you for those who have listened to this episode of Film Sphere. We'll see you next time.